All right, still one very big, well, maybe two technically if you can count Jimmy Garoppolo if you count him, but some very big QB dominoes that still have yet to fall. Headlined by Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski from the owners' meetings earlier today talked about hoping for closure at some point. Let's open our conversation with Charles Robinson, breaking news master from Yahoo Sports, joining us from the Breakers. I'm jealous. I love that spot down in Orlando. He's at the owners' meetings. What do you know about Baker Mayfield's future now that we know for certain that it's not in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I talked to a number of teams while I've been here. There's really strong interest in Baker. I think as many as, maybe even a dozen teams might be interested in him. If you look at an AFC general manager said to me, if you look at, instead of just looking at the 2022 window, if you look at the next 2 years, he said, open it up to two. I'm paraphrasing here. He said, open it up to 2 years. And he said, there's a number of teams that have it's the get out year following 2022 with their quarterbacks. There are others that are sort of assessing the quarterback situation 2022. And he said, look, if Baker Mayfield were to become a free agent, meaning he was released by the Browns, he said he could see quite a few teams basically rolling out the red carpet and saying, hey, let's see if we maybe can work you into the future plans here and get some traction. Now, the problem is it's the financial commitment. It's like $18.8 million that he's guaranteed, and no team wants to pay that right now. And unless the Browns are willing to pay the vast majority of that, they're going to have at least right now, they're going to have a difficult time finding a trade partner. Now, the Browns want to be patient and see if maybe some circumstances arise that creates a trade market for Baker. But right now, what they're being approached with is patience from other teams that are sitting there going, Jimmy Garoppolo's sitting out there, there's no market for him. Baker's sitting there, there's no market for him. Let's just be patient and wait for guys to get cut.
Hey, Friday we saw the Browns introduce Deshaun Watson. I wonder, what's the talk around the Breakers? What's the talk around the owners' meetings about that scene on Friday? And I know you've written about it. The macro effect of the mammoth contract that the Browns gave. What are people saying behind the scenes?
Well, I would say that the Haslam's signing off on a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed deal, giving a contract structure that was remarkably favorable to Deshaun Watson, considering he's still under NFL investigation, and the fact that there's no real discount here. The thought process was, when a number of teams were looking at getting involved, it was, well, maybe we can get a distressed asset here. Now, I don't mean to be distasteful here. I'm just talking about the football aspect of this, looking at Deshaun Watson as a football asset. Well, there was no distressed portion of this. That was funny. I was talking to an NFC coach literally 2 hours ago, and he was remarking that there's no discount here. There wasn't a discount. It went the opposite way. It warped the market for us, where it concerns high-end quarterbacks moving forward and guaranteed money moving forward. So I would say that part of the talk here amongst ownership groups is just what did the Haslam's just do? They changed the way that we have to approach elite level contracts with quarterbacks, maybe even to the point of guaranteeing as many as 4 years. Teams have a hard time guaranteeing 3 in most players, but now it's getting to the point where you might just have to come out of the gate guaranteeing 4 years with quarterbacks. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the football aspect of it, which is, I think there is a curiosity to see what Deshaun Watson ultimately looks like when he gets on the field with the Cleveland Browns, because, there are coaches and executives that will remind you, he wasn't the savior for the Houston Texans. He was a great quarterback, and they still had a losing record. This idea that he just is going to come in and instantly create a Super Bowl contender for the Browns, we'll see. We'll see if that occurs. So, and then you get to the off-field stuff, and the big question amongst teams, executives, I would say even coaches, is he going to avoid something from the NFL? Is it, the contract structure being what it is, do teams now have to worry about going to the negotiating table with agents and them saying, well, we want a contract structured this way just in case he gets fined for this or suspended for that? It feels like a lot of teams aren't okay with the structure of the deal. And yet I think if the league office was being completely transparent about where they stand on this, there's nothing saying that the Deshaun Watson investigation wraps in 2022, which means if it wraps in 2023 and there's a suspension, it's the $46 million in guaranteed base salary in 2023 that now gets on the table if he's suspended for games.
Yeah, I can see the league doing that instead of voiding the contract. Like, okay, you got something for us? We got something for you. 2023, that's when we're really going to come down and penalize you and take away something that you tried to protect. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about Baker. And I'm thinking in terms of fit. And I know the Steelers and Ravens have dealt with each other before, although they're bitter rivals. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of examples of Browns-Steelers trades. I know the Steelers have taken the Browns' so-called trash and Joe Hayden, and he was really good corner for them. Would he be a good fit? Would Baker Mayfield be a good fit with Pittsburgh? I think he would. What do you think?
I think, part of the aspect with Baker is finding, do you have the right offensive coordinator for him? And so someone said to me, look at what Cliff Kingsbury's running in Arizona. There's going to be a lot of shotgun. There's going to be a lot of spread sets. And someone actually said to me, they think that Baker has gotten himself in trouble at times for overestimating what his own abilities are as far as like arm strength, where he locates the ball, things of that nature. So I wouldn't say he's a fit everywhere. You have to run a very spread-oriented shotgun type offense that's not, it's not going to be predicated on the deep ball, huge chunk plays. So, and there has to also be an ability to let Baker create a little bit, maybe not as much as he was in Cleveland, but, have a little bit of freedom to move around and manipulate plays a little bit. So it's hard to say what the exact perfect fit is right now. I will say this, what's clear is he needs to be protected. And one of the teams that actually was in that group that said they would, told me they would be interested in it, I kind of said, okay, well, the guy you got right now, he hasn't been great when he's not protected. How's that really change if Baker comes in and he's not protected? He said, yeah, you're right. Like, we would have to protect him. You can see that he's not a Joe Burrow type who can get sacked 9 times and still have a great game.
Hey, Charles, want to see what you know about this. This just came across from Brian McCarthy from the NFL. He tweeted that the NFL has announced a diversity advisory committee, the members of that committee. Today, the National Football League announced the creation of the NFL Diversity Advisory Committee following its pledge last month to retain outside experts to review the league's diversity policies and practices. The 6-member committee will lend its external perspective on industry best practices and will evaluate league and club diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies, initiatives, including all hiring processes, policies, and procedures, with a primary focus on senior-level coach and front office personnel positions.
Right.
After completing this evaluation, the committee will provide comprehensive recommendations to the league office and club ownership for consideration. Rick Smith, the former general manager for the Texans, is among the 6 members. He's a name I recognize. What's the significance of this committee and its announcement, Charles?
I would call it the response to the Brian Flores lawsuit. And essentially the way I read it, when I was going through the sort of parsing through the details of it, was the NFL saying, hey, we're going to seek outside outside almost arbitrator to look at this situation and what we're doing and try to remedy what's going wrong here in the system. I would give the NFL points for this. I think looking at what it has been doing and saying we have not been good at solving this in-house. If we were, we wouldn't still have this problem that we have right now. We wouldn't still have this lawsuit that we have right now, which appears to be widening. The word is there are going to be other plaintiffs that join Brian Flores in that lawsuit. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but there's an expectation it will happen in the coming weeks, if not days. And so this is essentially the NFL saying, we're willing to go outside of our own house here to basically have some vetting done and figure out where this is breaking down and what best practices are, and whether or not we haven't addressed those. And that's not the only thing that happened today, too. I mean, there was an announcement essentially that there's going to be an effort on the NFL's part to favor some diversity in the next ownership change, which would be the Denver Broncos. And that's something we've spoken about on the phone here. On the show here, I've told you guys, I always felt like part of resolving this problem, or at least addressing it in a meaningful way, is to continue to tackle this at the very top. And that's diversity in those executive level meetings where you have an owner and they're essentially right-hand person at the table. Well, it appears right now that they want to lean into looking at ownership groups for the Denver Broncos that have a far greater level of diversity at the very top rungs, including the primary owner of the franchise. And to me, that would be a stride in the right direction.
It seems that there are two extremes. We're talking about the Brian Flores lawsuit. Bill Belichick said today, I can't talk about it, which he actually can, because John Mara did talk about it and said he won't settle. How do you read the room, so to speak? How do you read the room when it comes to the Flores lawsuit? Does the league feel like Flores really has a case, and that's part of the reason why they're trotting some things out right now, kind of like a preemptive strike before we get into the nitty-gritty of this lawsuit?
I do. I think there's some element of a preemptive strike here by the league. I think the league is far more uncomfortable with the without merit message that was first sent out when that lawsuit dropped, and now is trying to take a stance that says, look, we're not sitting here and saying there's nothing here. There's no problem. We're not going to fight this and essentially spit into the wind, because people can see there is a problem. There are people inside of our organizations that are telling us there's a problem. There are people in leadership positions inside the NFL that are saying there's a problem. So in some respects, I would say that, yeah, this is an attempt to maybe not cut off the litigation, but to show we've started to try and make some changes here that we think are meaningful. Will that ultimately change their overall opinion of the litigation? The fact that they still believe the litigation is going to be unsuccessful? I don't think so. But, the NFL tries to win both battles, both in the courtroom and optics. And the only way they can do that in this situation is to try to repair a problem that they also simultaneously are saying in court doesn't really exist. Tricky, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Speaking of problems, did you do what I asked you to do, Charles? Did you share my overtime proposal with the powers that be? I'm just curious. No,
Mike.
You haven't had a chance to, is what you're telling me?
Mike, you give me a lot of homework in this job, and I'm trying my best to do my work first. But
Okay.
I will do the best I can to.
Just forward the email.
As I continue to say, come on out to the location where I am at, and we can tackle it together. Hey, I would love to.
But they keep dancing around overtime. I've already figured it out. We don't have to get into it again. It's readily available for all the viewers of our show. They've heard it. Michael, I'm not going to subject you to it again. There it is. But we don't have. It's just one of these days y'all gonna all figure out that this is the solution. This is the closest. Perfect is the enemy of good. We're not going to get a perfect solution that's going to make everybody happy. This is the closest thing. Eventually, y'all will figure it out. So just do me that favor and pass that along to the people that make the decisions. All right. But I do want to ask you this. Michael and I, we obviously started the show talking about the thing that everybody's talking about today, which is Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars last night. I'm curious. Have y'all been talking about it down at the owners' meetings? And if so, what are your sources telling you? What's the insight from the breakers about that Oscars incident?
So we all lived in the same world last night here, okay? So it's late, as it gets into the evening hours, typically you're either in the hotel lobby or in the hotel bar or whatever. You're trying to snag an executive or coach here or there or whatever. And almost simultaneously, all of us, our phones started to just blow up. And it was, people who were talking, Will did this, or did you see that? Or I was completely confused. I'm like, why are people talking on my phone about Will Smith and Chris Rock? And, and then we're all watching the video together and we're just dumbfounded. We were blown. We couldn't believe what we were actually seeing. And it ended up this morning at breakfast. It was myself and a number of the ESPN folks here, Jeff Darlington, close friend of mine, Dan Graziano, Jeremy Fowler, we're all kind of sitting there, and breakfast became consumed by are you team Chris or are you team Will? And we started hashing out like who was in the right here and who was in the wrong. And actually, Jeff made a funny remark that, maybe he should do his, hey, live from the owners' meetings, let me give you the update on what's going on. And he was like, well, I asked everybody today about the Will Smith, Chris Rock moment last night. And I said that would be one of the greatest segments you've ever done on ESPN. It'd be instantly viral. He chickened out.
Absolutely. That's the information that the people want to know. I mean, I don't know if you want to speak for them or not. I'm curious where everybody came down.
It was pretty split, actually. There was sort of look, I think a lot of people were like, hey, was it the wrong thing to do at that moment? Yeah, because it changed. How I felt was it now takes two tremendously successful people, and it now creates a prism that they'll exist through for the rest of their lives and careers, which is tremendously unfair given the amount of work both of those people had to, put in to get to that moment in life. And now this is what it becomes. Now that said, part of the entertainment process, part of those jokes, I mean, you go through that. Everyone has gone through that. And I can understand kind of Denzel saying, hey, what he said at the height, the devil comes for you. Like, I get that. But at the same time, you kind of understand too, like, I kind of get the defense moment where you're like, you know what? I laughed initially when I heard that, but now as I sit here, I'm not going to let that go. And me personally, I think that is just the final reverberation of the red table talk that made Will Smith a household meme for a really long time. And if that was me, I know eventually it would wear me out too.
That's a big part of it. And I don't know if Michael and I touched on it earlier, is it didn't happen in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Like whatever Will Smith is either, and I'm not gonna psychoanalyze it, whatever he's dealing with, or whatever he's had to endure, self-inflicted or not, everybody got an opinion. Everybody is, got a take on his marriage or whatever. So he probably, like you said earlier, Michael, like he came into it with some baggage of some kind. You know what I mean? That triggered her. It wasn't just that. A lot of people looking at it as like, oh, that joke wasn't harmless. It was that joke on top of, that joke wasn't that bad, excuse me. It's that joke on top of everything else that probably led to him just saying enough is enough.
Well, I think it's fair to say, and I'm glad, Charles, that you brought up the red table, because that might be a part of it. We don't know. But we know about the red table, which is wildly successful. Why? Because Jada introduced that. She's got her mother on there. She's got her daughter on there. She has brought Will to the red table to talk about some issues in their marriage. She's made that public. So if you're in entertainment, they can be private. Nobody told you to make your marriage and some of the issues in your marriage public. She did it. He's done it in his book. He's talked about it. And so if you're Chris Rock, you got the red table. You got Will Smith talking about his marriage and their issues and how they were and how they've evolved and their whole family being very public. And you've got fodder for jokes. How are you to know? How are you to know that, okay.
Right. What's the line?
There are no more jokes. And here's the other thing. That I'm fearful that we're becoming humorless. Hey, you can't say that about my wife. Oh, a comedian can't say something about you? Right. It's a joke, but we can't take jokes anymore.
No, that's why I think you go too far with that, man. Like it's not. This isn't soft PC.
I went too
culture.
far, so slap me now. I went too far. Come slap me.
This isn't soft PC culture, and that blanket statement of like, oh, we can't take a joke anymore. Like, look, famous people, rich people, famous people, rich people, whatever you want to call them, they're people at the end of the day. And again, Michael and Charles, just because you weren't privy to the conversation, I am in no way suggesting that the appropriate reaction was to slap Chris Rock. Okay. But it was a reaction. There was stimulus involved. And we don't know the private moments. We don't know the private struggle. I have been in a situation where I've embarrassed myself on television based on something that I didn't know. And I didn't know what the reaction was going to be because I didn't do my research. Chris, I don't think he was being, like you said earlier, Michael, he was not intentionally trying to make fun of somebody that he knew suffered from alopecia. Having said that, though, we don't know what that private struggle does to that marriage. So yes, we can sit here and say, Will Smith should not have reacted that way. And I'm not arguing with that. I wish he would have just cussed him out from there. I wish they'd have handled it behind the scenes. I wish they would have. But what I know, Charles, and sorry, I don't mean to, just keep you here listening to us. What I know throughout my life is that if you say the wrong thing about the wrong person's loved ones, you could get a very disproportionate reaction depending on what that triggers. Mama, and how many fights have been over somebody's mama? How many fights have been over somebody's kids? How many fights have been over somebody's wife? You don't say certain things about people's loved ones. Doesn't mean he deserved to get slapped. It means that's the risk he took when he made that joke.
Well, and there's an element too where it wasn't like earlier in the show, sort of a joke made about the single guys getting up on stage, and the what was aimed at Will Smith was, well, Jada's going to allow you. Regina Hall had said that, you can get up on stage here, Will. And so it wasn't even the first time that had kind of been joked about. And one other element I would like to remind people here too. Will doesn't go home at night with Chris Rock, okay? He goes home with his wife, okay? He lives every day with his wife.
That's who we got to sleep with. That's what we got to look at.
That is exactly right. And I can tell you that if I am out and someone insults Dawn and I feel like it is something that is hurtful to her, there's going to be some math in my head where I'm like, you know what? This is one of those moments where I think I got to do something here, even though it might not necessarily be the right thing for me to do. I personally, the way I absorbed it is just that it really sucks that you have two great defining individuals in our space, in our lifetime, in this in their chosen professions, and now this marks this forever. that sucks.
No, that's gonna live in infamy. It really will. And I told Michael earlier, Mike, I think you felt it too. It's like I had trouble sleeping last night. It was as though we saw two uncles. We saw two uncles get in a fight, or two cousins get in a fight. It felt personal, for a lot of us, just because we live with them. We live with both of these guys. Their contribution to the culture and popular culture.
Why did they let them sit there? Why? And it's not the Academy's fault. I mean, the Academy didn't create the situation.
And now
this has probably changed award protocol going forward.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be plexiglass.
You can't just
now.
You can't just have people. You can't just have people walking up on stage. But I wonder.
Hey Mike.
After that,
they're gonna have Baptist church armor bearers. They're gonna have armor bearers and ushers.
Yeah, that's right.
Standing up front.
Wait. Hold on. Like, why did they let him sit there after that when it was clear that it wasn't a joke? Why did they let him sit there? And two, I'm going to give credit. You know what, Charles? I also want to say real quick before I pass it back to you. I want to give credit. We talked a lot about play-by-play guys lately, getting a lot of money, whether it's Joe Buck or Al Michaels or Mike Tirico, just kind of switching jobs. Chris Rock did a fabulous job of play-by-play. Yes. He was in the moment.
Yes, he was.
He was right on top
of
it.
In the history of television.
And kept his composure. He kept his composure.
He did. He not only did he take it, but to see him roll with it the way that he did, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive for him to know the moment and be like, okay, I can make this worse, or I can just kind of roll with it and make the best out of what just happened. I will say, Dan Graziano did say, he said this morning, and I howled. He said something along the lines of, well, if Will's there next year, he's going to be in the balcony.
That's true.
Probably right.
I was curious. Hey, thank you, Charles. We appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us from the Breakers, and give everybody our best. I was actually curious. Like, obviously it was a pretty foregone conclusion he was going to win. I was curious if somebody else had won, if they'd have, made a joke about it and been like, hey, you know what? On second thought, Will, you got it, boss. I don't want those problems. Like, thank goodness Will won. If somebody would not have won, it might have been some furniture moving last night. If somebody else would have got it. So, all right, man. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right, take care, guys.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.